We start our video outside looking at trees. A couple of weeks ago, thunderstorm came through the area and a tree like these snapped, hit the utility lines, took out power for the whole neighborhood, and the limb caught fire. Fortunately, it happened during a downpour, so the fire got extinguished. Right before this all happened, I was on a Zoom call with my coworkers, and I had mentioned to them that there was a storm coming into the area, and they noticed immediately when the lights went out, and they were surprised that I was still on the call. I informed them that my workstation and monitor were both on a UPS, so they were getting power. I was able to complete the rest of my Zoom session, but unfortunately, the router that's in a different room, which is also on a UPS, but it's a much smaller unit, doesn't have the runtime that the workstation UPS has. So I went shopping for a better UPS to power the router in that room. My initial choice was the CYBERPOWER 1350. Unfortunately, nowhere does it say that it's a full sine wave output. It was only when I turned the unit over and looked at the specs that the output waveform is simulated sine wave. And since this is going to be protecting electronics, you really want a full sine wave. We finally got our CYBERPOWER sine wave battery backup, but in an effort to save money, some shippers just send it out in a product box. And as you can see, that's not always the best way to ship something that weighs like 20 pounds. Removing the product from the box, we can see the impact that it took on the side, tearing the cardboard. Bottom styrofoam looks good. The other piece of styrofoam, not so good. It took an impact that cracked it open all along that side. So the styrofoam did what it was supposed to do. It took the brunt of the impact. So far, I've not seen any cracks or damage to the case, but I'll do a closer inspection. Kit does come with a USB cord and coaxial, instruction sheets, and an attached 3-prong power cord. Having passed both the visual and rattle test, I'm pretty sure this unit is intact and not damaged. Thing to note is that if you just press the power button, nothing happens. The unit is designed so that the first time you go to power it up, it needs to be plugged into an outlet. Otherwise, it will not turn on. So we grab our 3-prong plug, put it in an outlet, and now the unit starts to charge automatically, and it turns on. At this point, it's best just to leave the unit alone for about 8 hours so that the battery can fully charge. After leaving the unit plugged in for 8+ hours, we're ready to go through all its features. You have a power button in the front, and that power button will illuminate to let you know that the system is working correctly. Then you have a display panel, and that display panel has 3 buttons underneath it. The first one allows you to scroll through the different functions. So right now it says that we have an input of 119 volts. The system is online, and currently there's no load on it, and the battery is fully charged. And now we're looking at output. We're looking at the frequency output, how many watts are being output from the unit. So currently nothing's plugged into it. Volt amperes, which refers to apparent power in an AC circuit. And percentage of watt, or the load on the system. The VA percentage. And battery status, which is at 100%. Batteries should last you about 3 to 5 years. And then our estimated runtime, which right now is 175 minutes with no load on the system. And how many events? Events are voltage surges, brownouts, so the voltage goes high, goes low, there's an outage or a spike through the system. Those are events. And then we're back to our input. Second button is to silence the alarm. So if we emulate a power failure by unplugging the unit, there you go. It's beeping. It lets you know that you've lost utility power. And we see that our estimated runtime has dropped in minutes, even though there's no load, because the system itself is using power because it has a transformer. Anyway, if the alarm kept on beeping, you could silence it by pushing that button. You simply hold it down. Let's try that one more time. You should get an indicator that the alarm has been silenced. So it would seem that this button is not working because pressing it should reveal a little bell with a slash going through it that lets you know that the alarm has been silenced, and then you can just toggle that back on. But as you hear and see, that is not the case. So I'll see it a little bit later if when we hook this up to the computer, if we can actually turn it on internally and bypass this button, which doesn't seem to be working. So let me plug back in the UPS. You see that it's now looking at the input voltage from the utility, so the system is back to charging. One thing to note, you will void the warranty if you use a power strip or extension cord. The included cord is about 4.5 feet, which is generally plenty. Our last button is the self-test button. You hold that down for 3 seconds, and the unit goes into a self-test mode. And once it's completed with that mode, it'll come back to the input voltage. And basically what it does is it puts the system into a mode where it's drawing off the battery to make sure everything's working. Below the buttons here are 2 USB ports. And if we bring in our little magic light here, I can plug into the port and we get nothing. Let's see, is it on? Yeah. Oops, oh, it's not plugged in. Sorry, my bad. Let's plug that in. And there we go. As if by magic, we have light. So both these ports are only active when the unit is turned on. Now, if we lose utility power, you'll see that this keeps on operating. So you can charge devices while utility power is out, and you have 2 ports available for that. These are not your fast charging USB ports. Now let's take a look at the backside. Starting from the top right, we have a USB and serial connector. These allow you to plug into your computer so that you can control the internal operations of this unit via the software that you can download from their website. So you have an option. You can plug in with a USB cord that's provided or a serial connection cord to your computer. Below that, there's an LED light, and that will fault on whenever there's something that's wrong with the system. Cable's not grounded, the polarity is reversed, those type of faults will give you a red light. Basically what you do is you unplug everything, see if it clears the default, and then slowly plug in one device at a time. Next to that, we have 2 internet jacks, and this allows you to protect your network against surges. So you just plug in and plug out. It's bidirectional, so it doesn't matter which way you go in. So you have, let's say, a cord coming from your modem, can go here, then come back out to your computer. Next to that, oh, by the way, there are no phone jacks. That used to be what they had here before, but these are just strictly for computer Ethernet use. Next to that are two coax cables, and these are not bidirectional. They're actually marked in and out. And what you do is you bring your cable coax into one side and then out to your modem, or out from your modem into here, then out to your computer. Now we have 5 3-prong connectors that are surge protected and battery protected. That means when you lose utility power, these ports will energize the devices attached to them. In the middle, we have a red button, and that is a circuit breaker. So should there be an overload, that will disconnect. And what you do is fix the issue and then push this button to reset the circuit. On the right side, we have 5 3-prong ports, but unlike these ports are strictly just surge protection. When utility power is lost, these will not provide any power. So basically, you only have 5 outlets that provide power during an outage. These are just strictly surge protection. Ideally, you don't want to fill these up anyway, because if you want your unit to run for a long time, then filling these up will just shorten that run time. In our case, we're probably just going to have a router going into it and maybe one small device, but we're not going to fill these up. But you could surge protect all your devices on this side and not worry that it's going to download the battery should utility go out. Then, of course, you have the power cord that comes out of the bottom. And like I said, it's about 4.5 feet or so of cord that you can plug in. The batteries on this unit are replaceable. And to replace the batteries, we're not going to go through that procedure, but it's in essence, you take off this front panel. There are 2 screws at the bottom. Remove that, front panel comes out, and then you slide out the replacement battery and you put in a new one. And that's it. Funny thing is, I've had one of these units for a couple of years now, and I think it's about 3 years, and it's still running strong. Haven't had to replace the battery on it, but those are nice because then you don't have to incur the full cost of replacing the entire box. You just replace the battery, and it's more eco-friendly. With our UPS charged and ready to go, we go onto our computer, log on to CYBERPOWER.com. Under support, we look for software, select that, and then we download the software for personal. And you have your choice of Windows, Mac, or Linux. We're going to go with Windows. That takes us to the download screen. You hit download. You select the latest version. That should automatically start the download, or you might have to tell it to save as. That should open a download window like this, and note where it's being saved to. In our case, it's the download folder, and we click save. Then we wait for the file to finish downloading. And as long as you're on their website, you can also register your product there. Once the file has finished downloading, you locate it, launch it, the installation proceeds, you pick your language, you give permission for it to install, you tell it next, agree to the terms of the license agreement, which you should read, the file location and folder, and I don't want to create a start menu folder. And at this point, it proceeds to install all the files and folders it needs for its operation. Once the installation is complete, you'll get this screen, and as you see here, it is not ready because we have not plugged in the included cable. USB end of this cable goes to the computer, and the rectangular connector goes to the back of the UPS. You may have to restart your system in order for the program to work. Once you get the power panel up and running, it opens up in a current status interface, which shows you the status of the system. If we go over to the little gear for settings, and if we go down to notifications, you see here that you can enable software notification, and you can also enable or disable the alarm on the hardware. And so we just did that. And as you can see on the interface, we now have the little bell with the slash through it, indicating that this will no longer alarm when it goes off utility power. And just to verify that, we pull the plug, we come over to the front panel, and we are now in UPS running mode. And you see it's still muted, so there's no alarm sound. You did hear this chime because now there is an event. Another nice feature of this system is it can actually send you an email when you lose utility power or you have an event. From the home menu, we can go over to event logs, and that'll show you any events that have occurred. So here we see that the battery is discharging, that the utility power failed, and that the UPS had not connected earlier when we were trying to get this application to work. But you see, once the application is running, it actually can be quite useful and informative. Having replaced the old UPS, you can see one of the immediate advantages of the new design is the fact that all your plugs are in the back, so they're out of the way, yet you still have access to the front of the unit. The display, which is dimmed out, is non-obtrusive. The only thing you see glowing is the power button. Now all that's left to do is to simulate a power outage. Once we lose power, the estimated runtime starts to adjust. Things that are hooked up to this UPS include the wireless router, an antenna amplifier, a DVR, an internet switch, and a television. 5 minutes into our simulated outage, we see that we have about 2 hours of battery time left. And mind you, of course, the television and the DVR are not running, but they're having a parasitic draw. The switch and the router, of course, are drawing power, and that's what we're really looking to keep energized. 2 reasons why I have the DVR and the TV on the UPS. One, if we're watching a story about weather in the area and we lose power, we can continue watching that. But more importantly, most of our outages are due to trees hitting power lines, and that generally occurs with a lot of voltage fluctuation. So in order to minimize that damage to our electronics, by putting them on the UPS, I eliminate that fluctuation. As we cross 10 minutes of the outage, we see that we have about 127 minutes, so still over 2 hours worth of power. 17 minutes into the test, and we're reading 126 minutes left on the battery. This is event 5. There's no power coming into the unit. Our output voltage is 120. Frequency is 60. Output power is below 1 watt. We're not drawing much power at all with the Wi-Fi router and the internet switch. 45 minutes into the test, and we still have 106 minutes left. We're over an hour and 5 minutes. We're down to 88 minutes left on the battery, and you can actually see that the battery level has dropped down 1 notch. We are 2 hours into our test, and we're still showing 46 minutes left on the UPS. This is more than sufficient for my needs. Generally, our power outages are anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour and a half. So this unit will do more than I'm asking for it to do with a runtime of in excess of 2 hours. And of course, once power is restored, the unit starts to charge the battery. Some of the pros and cons to this unit: well, you can't use it to back up your well pump, run a printer, a toaster, or any medical devices since it's not approved for that. You basically don't want to use this on any device that'll draw a lot of amperage or wattage because the unit's not designed for that. It weighs about 24 pounds, so it's a little bit heavy. Things I like about it, it has monitoring software that you can download online, which can notify you when you're away from home that you have an outage. You have 5 outlets that provide battery and surge protection, and another 5 that provide just surge protection. You also get cable and Ethernet surge protection. The case design is very modern and sleek looking. It has a real-time LED display, which cycles off, built-in circuit breaker. As you can hear, very quiet when providing power. Speaking of which, the alarm can be set to silent. It has full sine wave output to protect your equipment and has 2 USB 2.1 amp ports to charge your devices. What happened to the old UPS? Well, it got repurposed to back up the tankless water heater. So in case of a power outage, no one will get caught with a cold shower. If you found this video interesting or useful, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, join the subscription team, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.